to Chalk Talk. Today we are going to focus on diversity, equity and inclusion in schools. How do schools become truly inclusive? Why do they need a diverse student and teacher body? How do students gain from schools being equitable? These are some of the questions we're seeking answers to today with our expert in the house, Shivani. Shivani is a trained counselor with 35 years of experience of working with children, especially children with special needs. She is also a director of the Soch Foundation that works extensively with Delhi government schools. Having worked with mainstream and marginalized students, she is passionate about creating equal opportunities for all students. Welcome to the show, Shivani.
Thank you, Jan.
So our first question to you is, what does it mean for schools to be truly inclusive?
The key word is truly. Most schools try and be inclusive, or at least call themselves inclusive. And inclusion to me is when all students study in age-appropriate classrooms, irrespective of gender, irrespective of differences, be they physical or cognitive, irrespective of socio-economic, linguistic, cultural or religious differences. When all these children are in one classroom, and that's an age-appropriate classroom, the school is automatically inclusive. However, because you use the word truly, that's where the problem lies, because it has to be inclusion not just in word but in spirit. And there lies the problem. You can't just put these children into the classroom and not take into account, are they learning? Are they contributing? So they need to be valued members of the school community and then of course at society at large. So in my experience, I think that most schools put the similarities between children as center stage. But in a truly inclusive setup, you need to put the differences between students at center stage. So when you're planning curricula, when you're planning implementation, when you're planning events, you've got to look at the differences that exist in children, not just the similarities.
So, but then this would pose a lot of challenges for teachers and school leaders.
Yes, but nobody said that it's going to be a job without challenges. And if anything transforms society, it will be education. It's not going to be the budgets in the military, it's not going to be the laws that are passed, simply just the laws in the parliament. It is going to be education. So for me, the school leader's job is a transformational job. And if it puts a huge burden, it's not a burden, it's a challenge. If it puts a challenge, then so be it. Accept that challenge and move on. You know, it wasn't a job which is supposed to be 7 to 2 and you correct papers and you set papers and you go home. That's not a teacher's job anymore.
So it goes much deeper than that.
It goes way beyond that, and you need to ensure that when the classroom is diverse, it's for me it's a blooming and a blossoming classroom. Children are learning from each other. If there's diversity in the teacher faculty, children are learning from the faculty. And they're not learning just what you're teaching them. They're also learning what you're not teaching them. So they're looking at you and they're picking up things. So when you teach little children tall and short, you line them up and say who's tall and who's short, right? You're teaching it there and then. You don't need to have blocks and bricks to teach tall and short. You're using the child, you're teaching colors by what the child is wearing. So why can't you teach diversity just by one day some kid is speaking a different language? He or she is teaching you how to just write the alphabet in that language. How does that matter, at least in an elementary school? You're learning 5 new words. Every day maybe somebody speaks a different language. They teach the rest of the class 5 new words. So it's not so difficult, but sometimes I think the motivation is missing.
All right. So hearing you say all of that, it sort of highlights the importance and that the teacher has in a classroom and the responsibility that in fact that the teacher has in a classroom. So could you tell us how school leaders and teachers can work towards making their classes more diverse?
So I think that the basic value which underlies inclusion is diversity. If you don't have diversity in your classroom, what inclusion are we talking about? There is no need for it. You don't even have to discuss it. When the classroom is diverse and the teacher or the school head is going out of his or her way to ensure that the enrollment is diverse. And I think some examples, at least in India, when you say that you have to go to, let's say, the neighborhood school, or you have to go within so many kilometers radius, that does bring in some diversity, because in that same area there will be the upmarket socio-economic family living and the not so upmarket family living, because that's the parent who's working in your family, with your families. So both those children need to go to the same school, and I think our rules and our policies are in place, but again simply in word.
So you think implementation is a problem?
I think implementation is a problem, and that implementation becomes a problem because partly the will is missing. Nobody is stopping me from doing it, but nobody is mandating that I do it. Nobody is coming to check that what's the diversity ratio in your school. Boys and girls is the easiest diversity to bring into a school, but the other diversity is very hard, and you do know how much trouble we've had with economically weaker section being integrated into the same mainstream school, and everybody's resisted it, from parents to teachers, and obviously I think the least resistance comes from kids, but when they see the adult resisting, they think it's the right thing to do. So yeah, it's a challenging task, but it's not undoable, if that's a word.
So we've got one last quick question for you, Shivani. What can school leaders do to maintain inclusivity in their schools while also being diverse?
So I think for me, diversity and inclusion are not mutually exclusive words. You can't say that either we are inclusive or we are diverse. I mean, the value which underlies inclusion is diversity. Only when there is diversity and equity in a classroom will the teacher or the facilitator need to work towards inclusion. If there isn't diversity, I don't have to work towards inclusion. So I think teachers can do a lot, and the teachers will do it if it is expected of them. So therefore that task is the school leaders. He or she has to expect and accept your teacher to make a classroom inclusive, and you can make your classroom inclusive by very simple modifications. You can modify the content. I know there are syllabus and syllabi, but till grade 8 it doesn't matter. So you modify the content of what you're teaching. You modify the procedures, the way you teach. You can teach it in multiple ways to children when you know there are different kinds of children in your classroom. You can also modify, for me, what is the output. So the child telling you that he or she has learned or understood, or what have they understood, can be produced in a very different manner. Everyone does not have to do particular 5 set questions.
So could you give us an instance or an example just to make it clearer for the audience?
So when we set, if I've taught a lesson and I know that there are 2 very crucial questions in it, question answers, I can say that these 2 everybody has to do. Pick 3 more that you want to do. You can draw it and explain it to me. You can write a poem on it and explain it to me. You can write a rap song on it and explain it to me. You can make a diagram. You can make a mind map. Do what you want. So make some things mandatory, some things optional. And I think children will really benefit from that. I can give you a small example of a little girl that I once worked with, and she had to do oxbow lakes in geography, which is a very common thing. And she was bored by the end of that assignment, and she refused to write the question is, how are oxbow lakes formed? And she refused to write it, and she said, I'm bored, I know how it's formed, I don't see why I need to write it. And I remember saying, can you draw it? And she said, yeah. So she drew it. She drew exactly how oxbow lakes are formed. But the teacher did not want to mark it correct.
You know, that was going to be, I was coming to that, that was going to be my next question. Because it probably does get difficult for teachers to assess.
So the teacher asked me that, do you expect me to give her marks for this? So I said, I have no idea what an oxbow lake is. So if you look at this diagram, can you tell me what's an oxbow lake and how it's formed? She said, of course. And she said, the diagram is beautifully done. I said, so does that mean the child has understood? She said, yeah. I said, so why can't you give her the marks? Where's the problem? You're looking at whether she's understood, right? She's understood it, give her the marks. And that was a big battle. But I did say that, okay, the question says right. You can deduct 1 mark, but give her something. You can't give her a... So why even say, just say explain how oxbow lakes are formed. I can explain it any way I want. But I think we are making life easier for the teacher. That's what we are doing.
By maintaining status quo?
By maintaining status quo, and I know how to correct a written assignment. When every assignment is different, I need to be alert for much longer. Otherwise, I can just go tick, tick, tick. I can check the 5 points and tick it. So I think it's easier on the teacher, and therefore it stays.
Do you think it also, this kind of flexibility in curriculum, in assessment, would require the school system to change a bit? I mean,
oh yes, a lot, not just a bit. But I think I see glimpses of those changes coming in policy. Implementation again is going to be hard, but they are coming in. And I think the teacher who's looking to make that change will grab the chance. And more people or more teachers should be encouraged to make the change, and that will only happen if the school head expects you to make the change.
Thank you so much, Shivani, for your insights. Thank you.
So Shivani's helped us gain a new perspective to show us how absolutely critical diversity, equity and inclusion is in our schools, and how we should all strive to bring it into our classrooms. Catch us for more such informative and interesting sessions. Stay tuned to Chalk Talk. Thank you.